Welcome to the studio, Mikayla Curti. Thank you for joining us for the Epiphany series. How are you today?
Hello, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's really great to have you in because I've been meaning to speak to you for a while. You obviously did a healing on me, and I was I was really blown away with what you did. And I'd like to know a bit more about what a certified energy medicine practitioner does. And I know you do some dietitian work as well. So yeah, could you tell us a little bit about what you do and your job?
I work with people on a daily, well, lately it's not so much on a daily basis because of what we're going through in the world, but I work when I have the opportunity to make a difference with someone, and it usually is with people that have had some form of trauma. And I was trained by the Four Wind Society, although I've always been tendentially intuitive by nature. I've always been able to tap into somebody's energy intuitively, with permission, of course. And what I do is I connect with them and I help them to see what is blocking them, what is in their world not helping their health, their well being, their progressing, they're feeling free and thriving and successful in what it is that they wish to accomplish, whether it be healthy, be happy, have a healthy relationship. So I was trained to work in the energy field of people and sort of basically be an IT person of the energy field and stop bad programs from programming.
Sure. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed, Mickey, when we were doing the healing was that you seem to combine the dietitian work with the energy medicine work. Can you tell us a little bit about, a typical healing that you might do with somebody and the things that people have been coming to you to that you've been helping them with?
Well, in terms of working with people and with being my first training, nutrition, I intuitively can tell whether there's a loss, there's a lack, there's some kind of shortage somewhere. It's always spirit led. So I'm always the vessel of some other message that comes through. But between that and my own scanning, I can tell w- maybe in not great detail, but in in a pretty big assumption that the person will need to investigate vitamin B, vitamin C. Very big on the vitamins for some reason. They just flow to me during a healing, and I can really tell if the tissue and an energy of a person is lacking certain nutrients. And I can tell from a chakra, and I can tell from a whole system or an area, or even sometimes the hydration. So since I'm not a licensed doctor, I don't make any diagnosis. This is very important to tell. But I tell the person, I am sensing that you might sort of be not drinking enough water. I can tell that your tissues are not as hydrated as I'd like them to be. And please know that all of my sessions are remote. So this is obviously not a touch sensation. This is really an energy field sensing that I detect. And when I detect these things, I detect them in the form of this is what I sense. I highly suggest that you check with your doctor or your health care practitioner and investigate. And people always come to tell me, you know what? I did my blood test and sure enough, you were right. My B12 was periculously low. So I'm given information that I relay, and the patient then decides what to do with it. And It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, what a gift to have. Is this something that can be taught, or is it something that people need to have naturally? That kind of natural intuition that you said you had when you were younger.
I think we can all do it. I've had it pretty much all my life, not really knowing that it was something that everybody did or did not have. I've come to learn after I've done the training with the shamans that it was apparently something particular to have, and I furthered my development. Um, it's still not in the greater detail of things. I cannot tell cancer or things like that, but I can definitely tell if an area or an organ is having some kind of disbalance. So I think we all can. We just need to trust, and we need to develop whichever channel it is that we work with, whether it's hearing messages from the loved ones of the person that come in to help, or whether it's through clairvoyance, which is not something I have. I am clairaudient, clairsentient, empathic, not clairvoyant. I don't see. I feel always, or hear, or know, or feel these downloads in my brain that come from out of nowhere. So I think we all can. We just need to further our own development, and we can all do it.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear. In indigenous cultures and in the Eastern cultures, these kind of things are very much accepted, aren't they? These kind of philosophies. But sometimes in the Western world, if you're talking with friends, these kind of things can be a little bit, I don't know, people might describe them as being a bit out there and a bit weird. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say to someone who is skeptical about these kind of approaches, who doesn't believe in this kind of intuition, this almost feeling the energies of people and helping heal them that way, which obviously our ancestors used to do, but in this day and age, if you don't have a doctor before you name, people might be a little bit questioning of this philosophy.
I don't change an ounce of my approach with people who don't believe. I explain it the way I explain it to you. And if it makes sense and it resonates for them, and if they actually feel it, because there's another aspect there, not just understand it, but feeling something, then great. If they don't feel it or understand it or even want to partake in it, I'm just very capable of being a regular dietitian, and that's it. Most of the time, honestly, I just do my job as dietitian. I just step in when I have the permission to do the intuitive work. I don't just pop out in a consultation. Oh, spirit has told me that your vitamin D is low. But with the right people that actually tell me that they're very interested in this type of session, I'm more than happy, and I open all my avenues to let that flow and let that happen. So nothing is ever forced.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it in a way of trust and complete transparency, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for those people who are interested, because a lot of people who are kind of really opening up to this kind of these means of healing, um, talk us through the chakras, because I mean, 20 years ago, chakras were probably known by 0.1% of the population, but maybe there's quite a few people now who are starting to show a bit of an interest.
So we have chakra number one, which is the one that really connects us to the earth, uh, and also the one that connects us to all of the energies that we can absorb from the environment, the cosmic area, and just like the head, but very much keep us connected to the ground and the earth and the energies. But it's also where we store energies of reproduction, energies of being vital. So everything that regards, this chakra will be, of course, very sacred, but also very intimate for us. And when we lack the grounding, when we lack control of our feelings, this is one chakra that can be very affected first, because of how important it is. And it's the first one too. So that's where the energy starts coming from the earth from. It's the point of beginning, quite literally. It's where human beings are made. So very important. And then we have number 2 chakra. It's immediately above from the root chakra, and it has other issues depending on being a man or a woman. We have different organs in that area, being a man and a woman. So the way that this chakra behaves in this balance depends on whether we're treating a man or a woman. But most of the time, it's still having to do with our emotions and taking hold of our personality, our sexuality, and our very deep feelings. And then we go into chakra number 3, which is supposedly less important than the root and the second, but really very much important because it's the center. It's the stomach, the plexus. So here we are so close to the intestinal system, which we've come to know how connected it is to our mood and the way we feel. Our gut health is infinitely connected to our mental state. And likewise, the chakra that is connected to it is infinitely affected by how we feel and how we control our emotions and how we store them. So every time we feel compressed and stressed and worried, this is the chakra that will be affected the most because it is the core, the center. And then we go up to the heart, and the heart is pretty intuitively the heart, the feelings, the emotions, the feeling, not just for the partner but for the family, the loved one, um, uh, children, babies, flowers,
Hmm.
everything that really gives us emotion. And everything that affects the heart will really take place in a strong way, because just like the stomach chakra, that is a very strong affection, a very strong affective way that it can affect the other organs. And when the heart blocks, we know how many things get affected. Also our breathing, we don't breathe as deeply. And imagine getting less oxygenated, less, getting more tired, more fatigued, because we're basically taking on life more
Yeah.
actively.
And of course, these four chakras can affect us in a positive way as well, can't they? Because I mean, I
Oh, absolutely. Maybe I've talked a little bit too much about the negative,
no,
but
no, but I was just thinking about the third one. For me, that's where I get my creativity from. That's when I know when I'm in good shape because I just wrote a book out of my third chakra just like that, and that's when you know you're in the flow, isn't it? I'm not saying
yes,
I'm always like that, but you kind of that's that flow of life that seems to get going. Sorry, I'll let
yes.
you get back to number 5.
Oh, no, no, no. That's great, because love and creativity and fruition and the thinking with the heart comes from there. Everything that is creation comes from there. So any blockage thereof or any further influence really influences all of these things that we can or cannot create and coordinate with our feelings, with our soul, with our mind, because our mind is always connected to everything. And we go to the throat chakra, which very intuitively so has to do with communication, but also as a communication and a conduit between the heart and the third eye and the very last one, the crown chakra. So any blockage here is a blockage between the lower part of the body and the higher part, and any connection with our thinking, our brain. And I actually see many blockages of chakras when I work on people on throat
Mm.
chakras, because many times we want to communicate something to someone. For some reason we don't, or we can't, or we think we can't. And the very, very first thing that will happen when I work on a person like that is their throat chakra is blocked. And I need to work not just on unblocking it, but also on seeing what is causing this block and how I can help the person to not feel that they need to go in this constriction mode, which is ultimately what provokes these things. And then we go to the third eye. The third eye chakra is also intuitively our third eye. This is where the most clairvoyant people, not me, actually see, um, and can actually see the invisible. I sometimes have flashes, and I've actually been occasionally seeing in the energy field certain energetic patterns, but it's very, very undeveloped in me. But usually, this is where we are given an opportunity to see something that we're not seeing with the eyes. So any blockages to this area is a blockage to our ultimate intuition, our ultimate vision without having the eyes, our believing, and our um ultimate manifesting, even because this has to do a lot with the ethereal, not just with the terrain and the mundane. And then we go to the crown chakra, which is another connection, just like our root chakra, to the heavens. But it's also the very last chakra that actually nourishes all our brain, our head, our thinking. And again, it's not just thinking, it's feeling and the coordination of all our being, and every other aspect and every nerve and every sensation of our body. So you see, we have very important functions, and a little blockage in one of them can affect us. And that's what we work on in sessions. And I try not to be the person that says I'm a chakra balancer, because that sounds too allopathic for me. I like to work on somebody saying, okay, so this chakra is blocked, but let's see why. Let's see what's behind it. Because if you work on the reason and the source, then that chakra won't get blocked again. And maybe if it'll get blocked, it'll be another reason, but you at least worked on the source, so that problem won't return, rather
Yeah,
than just putting a band-aid and, oh, okay, we balance the chakra.
yeah, and that seems to be the criticism of modern medicine, doesn't it? The fact that they always go with the symptoms and address the symptoms rather than the root of the problem, which often means that the disease might come back.
Right. You need modern medicine too, because, if you break a toe, you're not going to go to a shaman. You really need that taken care of. At least you need to know that it's just the toe and not the whole foot, and maybe get that in a cast if need be.
Yeah.
But, for things like, I always get colds and I don't know why. I take loads of vitamin D. I had a patient like that. And when we looked into her, there were major blocks of communication. She had loads of words and concepts and feelings she was holding. And once we released them and helped her to feel free to communicate all of these things with this person, her colds disappeared. She was not getting sick anymore.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Well, right now, I would say someone like yourself is crucial to helping people getting through COVID. Obviously, there's a lot of trauma going on, there's a lot of death, and people having to deal with that and not knowing necessarily how to deal with death. But I mean, just
It's a big
getting,
responsibility.
yeah, it's a big subject, but just at a very basic level, with this virus, with the COVID going round, what would you recommend? What vitamins would you and diet would you recommend people should be taking right now, just to make sure that if they do get the virus, that their body can deal with it?
Right now, what we know from studies and what the protocol of functional medicine uh, recommends, which is another specialty that I have, is to really maximize our intake of supplementation of vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, and of course, because you're taking the vitamin D, also vitamin K. The vitamin D, particularly in the most recent studies, has been shown to help either not get sick by the virus or helping the person to fight it better. So I think it's critical. Not many people are talking about it. It seems a general consensus that people are all waiting for the vaccines. The vaccines are probably having their importance, no discrediting, but we can also do a lot to make ourselves stronger and less susceptible while we wait for these things that we don't know exactly when they're going to be ready for us.
Yeah,
I myself have been exposed already 4 times and if not more, and I did not catch a thing. And I think it's because I don't eat dairy, so I bathe in vitamin D daily, and my levels are always high. And by virtue of these studies, I am not susceptible to infections. I don't remember the last time I had a flu, as a matter of fact,
sure.
because I follow these protocols and they have a validity that
Yeah.
sadly is not so known in the mainstream.
So when you talk about taking supplements, I mean, would you firstly recommend that people eat foods which are high in these things like vitamin D and vitamin K?
You always start by that, but really, Peter, in this pandemic, what we eat is not enough in vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin K, and zinc. It really objectively isn't. So that's why um, many doctors have started recommending supplementation because we know that we're not getting enough. The levels are subject to personalization. You can't just give willy-nilly an amount. For somebody like me that doesn't eat dairy, which is a major source of vitamin D, you'd probably want to have higher amounts. For my one time a year that I have tortelloni in Italy, I have to really step up my game with vitamin D supplementation. Somebody that has dairy on a daily basis, dairy, salmon, eggs, fish, mushrooms, and all of those nice sources, then maybe they need less. But it's always good to dose it with a health practitioner after a blood test.
And can you do these blood tests at home? I mean, could someone go to their local pharmacy and pick up a test just to see what their vitamin D levels are, or is that something that only doctors or practitioners can do?
Most of the times it's only doctors that can do these kind of recommendations. As a dietitian, I can suggest, but I cannot prescribe. In functional medicine school, I was trained on how to dose vitamin D for somebody after seeing the doctor recommendation and the doctor blood test, meaning the doctor had already um, gotten the result. Yeah, he had already said, okay, this is pretty low, do the rest. So then I can recommend uh, the intake and what foods have it, and with the doctor, the suggestion, and him, the doctor, or her, recommending the amount of vitamin D.
Okay.
It depends on the country. In the US, dietitians cannot recommend or prescribe. When you're a holistic practitioner, you are able to suggest. but you cannot really recommend or prescribe.
Sure, sure.
But basically, once you have a blood test, you can really see where a person is at and make a good estimation as to where you want them to be.
Yeah. Could this be the difference between someone living and losing their life during if they contract COVID-19? Is it that serious?
It's pretty serious. The people that have not fought well COVID or have passed from it or have gotten it, those few that have actually agreed to basically be taken in for their blood test levels, they've seen that their vitamin D levels were low. So it's a pretty strong correlation. I mean, peer reviewed studies came out of this. And so it's not, it's really science.
Yeah.
It's not just spiritual. This is science based for sure. It's just not really out there in the mainstream yet. People are not really aware of how big this is.
Mm.
So,
It's amazing that people aren't aware of something so crucial, which could save their life, isn't it? So, just
mhm.
carrying on a little bit in terms of diet. I mean, diet is so important, isn't it, to our lifestyle, to our bodies. I mean, we are what we eat, essentially, aren't we? Can you tell us a little bit? Because I mean, I've heard of a lot of people who've had depression, and they've actually had the depression healed by changing their diet. And I don't think a lot of
Yes.
people are aware of the stomach brain and the serotonin production. But could you give us a more scientific description of how our diet can help our mental health and can help our bodies?
It all starts in our gut, Peter. Just like I was saying earlier about our root chakra and our second and third, the third particularly, it all starts there. Our gut has thousands, millions of.
I don't know what that is.
I was pretty sure that that was not my voice.
It wasn't your voice. I don't know what it is though. I have no idea what I've never heard. Hold on, let me just try this one more.
So our gut is multiple varieties of bacteria, and the variety and the type determines our health and our capacity to produce compounds that are helpful for our mood, for our weight, even. So if we have not ideal or not diverse enough variety of gut, our mental health will suffer. So we've just come to find out these notions not too long ago, and now that we do, as a as an integrative dietitian, this is what I usually help people with, to really have a diversified gut health by integrating foods that encourage it and not kill it, um, by making their own probiotics, by taking probiotics, and usually the results are, they take time, but they're long term.
Yeah. And what kind of benefits can these people see by finding the right diet, by creating their own probiotics?
They can significantly improve their mood. They can decrease their depression. They can decrease their anxiety. Of course, to a certain level, you also need to resolve problems. You don't just magically wipe things out when, you know, you have a mortgage to pay and you haven't had a job in 6 months with gut bacteria. But a lot is done by the way that we take events and how our body responds, and how our body is equipped to respond says a lot about how we are going to manage an issue that is mental, that is psychological, and requires our stress. We also have a set of adaptogens that help us to deal with stress, and diet gives us a pool of these adaptogens. And if we have a diet that is poor in greens, in fine proteins, in fruit, in antioxidants, in good quality, low glycemic index carbohydrates, we're not going to be equipped to do as well as we could. Fiber, and of course, all of the varietals of fiber, which contribute to the gut bacteria as well.
So I'm sure you get asked this question all the time, but if you could recommend, and I know every individual is different, but if there's 3 or 4 foods that you think we could add to our diet that would really benefit us, what would they be?
Blueberries, avocados, and walnuts. Avocados are, I know I'm gonna probably upset all of the kilometer zero people. I know. Shipping an avocado to the UK is almost brutal, but in the grand scheme of things, we're shipping anyhow. We might as well try to be responsible about it, try to minimize plastic, but try to include these foods because particularly avocado favors the production of glutathione, which is a natural detoxing agent. So it really helps with helping us cleanse and helping us produce um, glutathione, which is ultimately very important for us to keep energized, keeping clean, keeping um, not storing toxins. And then, of course, the fact that it has a very good quality fat that is excellent for hormone production in our skin and cholesterol, healthy cholesterol actually, and good use of good cholesterol, not the bad kind. And blueberries are antioxidants, so they're the ultimate brain food. When you have a healthy brain, you have a brain that has properly circulating vessels and good circulation in good order, and antioxidants do just that. And walnuts, omega-3, need I say more? Brain food, again helping the brain think, keep healthy, but also with the process of thinking. And the fat is essential in the brain thinking and usage. And so we're giving it the good fuel, and we're feeding it its one of its favorite foods. And it's a better food, we know nowadays, than feeding it glucose. We do much better with the using of fat rather than sugar. So we know a lot more nowadays. Omega-3 is also important for the functioning of our joints, for our skin, for collagen. So these are 3 superfoods that I always try to have at home.
That's good. I'll be buying some more blueberries then. Um, you mentioned probiotics before and how we can actually build our own or create our own. How do we do that? Is that easy? Is it something we can do very easily at home?
It's actually not that difficult. You can make your own pickled cucumbers. I, of course, don't know the recipe by heart, but it's water, salt, and pickles. And you cut them and you put them in water and a certain amount of salt, and you keep them for so many days. And that's your probiotic. You can also do that with leftover veggies when they start to get a little wilted, that you don't really want to eat them anymore. You put them in salt, slice them up, of course. The salt will ferment them and start pulling out that little liquid that is probably looking a little disgusting, but that is the beauty of the fermentation. That is what is so healthy in our gut. So we'll process it, we'll chew it, we'll begin our first digestion, but once it gets in our intestinal system, it does wonders. So you can do that with cabbage, with carrots, with kale. You can do it with any leftover vegetable you have, or you can even just create it with not a leftover vegetable, but
Yeah.
really create your probiotic that way.
Yeah, I mean, probiotics, it took me a while to work this out, but I'm a bit slow sometimes, to be honest, Mickey. But how I'd taken so many antibiotics in my life and I kept having gut problems, but
Mm.
I'd never thought about the fact that I needed to rebalance my stomach. And
You need to rejoice those wee germs that have been unfairly killed.
yeah,
And the beast
exactly. Because, well,
killing the bad ones, they all got killed. So you got to repopulate the good ones.
but obviously, speaking to experts like yourself, you realize that you can't just go to the pharmacy and take these ones, which maybe they'll help a little bit, but it's nice to have something more natural, isn't it, to put into our stomach?
I think after an antibiotic, you really need to supplement with a really good quality multi-million probiotic, because after an antibiotic treatment, you are at such a decimation level that doing a few pickles is not going to be enough. So after an antibiotic, definitely discuss this with your health practitioner as to what kind is good for you, because there are a gazillion of probiotics, and I would not just throw out names without knowing the specific situation, but basically a good quality probiotic with millions of active bacteria is what one needs.
Yeah, good advice. Thank you so much, Mickey. I'm just going to ask you one more question, which is about gluten. I came off gluten about 6 years ago, and it changed my life. It really radically changed my health and increased my energy. I actually did it because I got to a point where I was being quite sick by eating it. It took me a long time to work out gluten was the problem, but there's still a lot of glutenators, skeptics about this theory. Tell me, because I'm not a dietitian, why it's important to at least reduce the amount of gluten in our diet, if not to completely, totally eradicate it.
There are many sides to the story, but I believe that from the studies that you see and from all that you read in the literature, there's definitely gluten intolerance. And there's definitely a side of the population that doesn't do well with gluten. We've known, even from studying with Alberto Violdo, that the shamans were not eating gluten, and they're all running around on those really high mountains without all the problems that we have. And they've been eating quinoa and potatoes and sweet potatoes and seeds, and they don't have our problems. Our civilization has been consuming the grain since ages, and it has been slowing developing issues that did not exist before the first making of bread and grain. And it has been a steady but consistent growth. And we've seen in studies, once again, that there are some individuals that really don't do well. And there's a graduatory, there's definitely a ladder. There are people that are mildly intolerant, people that are really intolerant, and people that have an absolute intolerance allergy. And those are, we know, the celiac people, our celiac friends. So there's this aspect, but there's also the aspect of, let's say that a person is not intolerant in any grade, in any shape or form, gluten is still not good because, one, we've had it for too many centuries, our body's oversaturated. It will probably start to react soon if it has not already. And if it has not, if you live in certain parts of the world where OGM, or as they say in the US, GMO, is still legal, you are probably going to develop other problems that resemble an intolerance, but don't really come across as an intolerance by virtue of what gluten and grains are sprayed over there. So that's an indirect problem that you develop. by virtue of how these pesticides interact with gluten. And I have a very personal example. When I lived in the US, gluten didn't bother me incredibly like you, but I had some mild symptoms. When I went to Canada, that grain is sprayed like there's no tomorrow. They have to, because it's cold, and they have to preserve the wheat from the cold, from freezing. And my intolerance was kicked up a notch. So if I felt it, and I've never been a very strong reaction type person. Imagine the people who react already, how they do. But they've seen from other experiments that really the GMO are not a good combination on gluten. Not that they're ever a good combination, but particularly on gluten, they're just really not good together, like putting alcohol on fire.
Yeah, yeah, wise words. Well, the gluten issue continues, and what I've noticed as well, speaking to a lot of people, is that it's not just the digestive system that's affected, is it? I mean, it actually can manifest in many ways as depression, as other physical issues.
Absolutely.
And it seems to be that a lot of people
Absolutely.
think that gluten is just something that, oh, if you get a stomach ache, but it's not just that, is it? For me, it was, but it
Well,
definitely affects people.
autoimmune disorders. Yeah, autoimmune disorders being number one.
Yeah.
And those are tricky to diagnose because you don't know where to start looking. And when you start looking at the way that we help people with autoimmune disorder, the very first element in the diet recommendation is gluten-free diet.
Mm.
And
Mm.
the moment patients start eating like that, they do much better.
Mm.
All of them.
What has amazed me, Mickey, is when my mum went into hospital with something very severe, which she might not have made it out from. The food that she was being fed in the hospitals was absolutely packed with gluten, and I just thought there's something wrong here with the health system. If these nurses and doctors are doing everything they can to save the lives of these people, and then they give them this big sloppy, old-fashioned gluten
Yeah.
fantastic meal, and but we won't go there. That's a conversation for another day. Thank you so much for taking the time
Thank you
to
for having me.
speak to us about dietitian stuff, about the food, about gluten, about the shamanic side and the energy medicine. If anyone wanted to get more advice from you, what would they do? How can they contact you? Have you got a website or an email address that they can reach you on?
I have two websites, one for nutrition that is called Raisin Health, raisin like the little fruit, raisinhealth.com. And my energy medicine one is modernized energy medicine.com. Modernized spelled the American way, sorry, with a Z, a Z. I apologize. I know I have to apologize every day in the UK. Modernizedergymedicine.com.
That's great. Well,
And they can email me. My email is Mikayla, Mikayla, at Raisin Health, again, raisin like the little fruit, healthinternational.com.
well, I'll be raising a glass to you tonight when I tell my family all about this discussion. Thank you so much for your time, Michaela, and take care, stay healthy, and stay off the gluten.
Yeah. I know for an Italian, that's a challenge, but I found all my gluten-free pastas now.
Italy's getting better, isn't it? I've been to some nice Italian restaurants which do some great gluten-free pizzas and gluten-free garlic bread. So Italy's definitely
They're
opened its
hard to
eyes.
come about. They're hard to come about, but you can already find them in Italy as well as it's growing as a problem. So
Yeah, a nation that's hooked on pasta and pizza has to do something about it, doesn't
yeah,
it? Mickey,
that's not something that is negotiable.
no, absolutely not. Well, take care, stay healthy, and maybe we'll get to speak to you again sometime soon.
And you too, and hello to your beautiful family. Thank you
I
so
will
much
do.
for having me.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.